what the contract is?
I want to say it's $3 million a year for 8 to 10 years. It's almost $30 million, something like that.
These leftists are idiots. Idiots. They're not about business. They're not about growing the WNBA. They're about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is insanity, what they're doing to Caitlin Clark.
Go back to the Stephen A. Smith show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirect, it involves...
Welcome back to WNBA Core. Before we dive into the rest of today's updates, we have a massive story breaking that has sent shockwaves through the basketball world. Fresh reports regarding Caitlin Clark's landmark deal with Nike have sparked intense debates across the WNBA, with analysts and fans weighing in on what this momentum means for the future of professional sports. Without taking up any more time, let's jump straight into today's analysis. The latest statements made by Stephen A. Smith have put league management in a deeply uncomfortable position, echoing whispers that have circulated across the sport for nearly 2 years. For months, there have been discussions regarding locker room friction, competitive envy, and subtle efforts to downplay the biggest box office draw in women's basketball. However, recent moves involving Nike, Travis Scott, and the Kelsey brothers have completely reshaped the narrative. Stephen A. Smith didn't just defend the Indiana Fever's star playmaker, he validated what many observers had long suspected. Caitlin Clark is no longer just a marquee athlete, she operates as a full-scale economic engine, creating a gap between her market draw and traditional league structures that PR statements can no longer hide. If anyone thought her initial headline figures represented the end of the story, that was merely the foundation for a much larger commercial rollout. We are watching a financial transformation that is fundamentally shifting the economic landscape of professional basketball. To understand why recent developments are so significant, we have to examine the campaign that set off this latest round of discussions. Stephen A. Smith addressed the situation directly, pointing out how internal league dynamics were highlighted by Nike's high-profile holiday campaign. Nike released a major promotional effort that stood in sharp contrast to standard league marketing. To build anticipation for her signature footwear line, the Caitlin 1, set to drop in spring 2026, they unveiled the cinematic, From Anywhere, campaign. The key details lie in the deliberate casting choices for that campaign. Notice who shared the screen with her. It wasn't traditional league personnel or legacy figures like Diana Taurasi or Cheryl Swoops. Instead, world-renowned cultural icons like Travis Scott and Jason Kelce were featured prominently. By positioning Caitlin Clark alongside global pop culture figures, Nike intentionally bypassed standard league avenues. Stephen A. Smith emphasized that this strategy was no accident, it was a definitive statement. It signaled that Clark's global reach extends far beyond traditional administrative boundaries. Before completing her second professional season, her cultural footprint has expanded well past standard league borders. According to Smith, this specific marketing direction represents a challenging reality for traditional league gatekeepers. The expectation was for a rookie to wait her turn and follow legacy protocols. Instead, global brand partners handed her the keys to a standalone commercial enterprise. To appreciate the weight of what Stephen A. Smith highlighted, we have to look closely at the financial realities driving these competitive tensions. When details of her multi-year deal first emerged, locker room dynamics were already complex. Established veterans found themselves competing alongside a newcomer whose off-court endorsement valuation dwarfed full team payrolls. However, updated projections from industry analysts indicate that early estimates were remarkably conservative. Insiders project that the Caitlin Clark signature line alone could generate over $150 million in revenue during its initial 3-year run. Consider the scale of those figures. Quick pause. If you appreciate this content, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to WNBA Core. Believe it or not, over 93% of our viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, takes just a second, and helps us keep bringing you daily coverage. Have you subscribed already? Awesome, thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. When news broke regarding her landmark multi-year endorsement agreement with Nike, structured as an 8-year, $28 million deal featuring a dedicated signature sneaker, it set a new precedent for athlete compensation. When you compare projected shoe line revenues against standard league salary structures, where average earnings hover around $76,000 and maximum player contracts cap out under $250,000, the contrast is stark. Stephen A. Smith pointed directly to this vast financial disparity as the underlying source of friction on the court. It goes far beyond game strategy. It involves a young star generating more revenue from a single product launch than many professional athletes earn over an entire playing career. Smith noted that when economic gaps of this magnitude enter a competitive sports environment, natural friction is inevitable. Smith took his analysis further, emphasizing that veteran athletes who spent years flying commercial, playing in modest facilities, and laying the foundation for the sport naturally feel overlooked when a rookie receives unprecedented commercial backing right out of the gate. He cautioned that the physical play, hard fouls, and defensive pressure seen over the past season were just the beginning. As the official face of global basketball marketing across genders, the competitive target on her back has grown exponentially. This bold strategy from major sponsors reflects data-driven business logic. Global brands analyze TV ratings, merchandise demand, and ticket queues stretching around arenas. Caitlin Clark represents a rare generational phenomenon. While league administrators attempted to distribute promotional focus evenly across franchises to maintain traditional parity, major sponsors chose to invest heavily in proven star power. Stephen A. Smith has consistently critiqued the league's handling of her arrival, arguing that attempts to mute her individual popularity to manage internal dynamics represented a missed opportunity. While management sought to emphasize collective branding, global partners recognized an iconic individual draw and acted accordingly. This contrast highlights a clear shift in narrative control. When top-tier cultural figures align with an athlete, official corporate validation is no longer required. Looking back at recent history, from intense on-court physical encounters and media rivalries to her notable exclusion from the National Olympic roster, Smith connects these moments to underlying competitive resentment. In hindsight, leaving the sport's most marketable figure off the international stage appears even more short-sighted. The same athlete now anchors global campaigns that eclipse traditional event marketing. Smith pointed out the irony on live television. While administrative committees played internal politics, corporate partners focused strictly on commercial reach. The effort to treat her as just another player backfired, ultimately elevating her visibility, influence, and market power while making administrative gatekeepers look completely out of touch. With the official release of the Caitlin 1 scheduled for spring 2026, anticipation continues to build. Securing a signature sneaker remains one of the rarest milestones in professional basketball, achieved by only a select few iconic figures like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. However, market analysts view Clark's upcoming launch as an event operating on an entirely different scale, drawing comparisons to historical signature debuts that disrupted the broader culture. Retail experts anticipate massive demand, immediate sellouts, and active secondary resale markets. Nike's introduction of her new interlocking CC logo across national billboards and apparel signifies her evolution into an independent brand. Just as the Jumpman silhouette evokes an individual icon rather than a specific team, the new brand identity centers directly on Caitlin rather than any individual franchise or league entity. This branding strategy deepens her independence. She is building a standalone brand identity that operates effectively regardless of external structures, creating a dynamic where platforms rely heavily on her presence. Stephen A. Smith warned that this level of player leverage presents a unique challenge for league organizers. This also intersects with broader discussions regarding media representation and athlete positioning, topics Smith has addressed repeatedly. He has pointed out how coverage around Clark is often viewed through complex societal lenses, noting that tension arises when a rising star from Iowa becomes framed as the primary economic savior of a league built over decades by established stars. While these discussions remain sensitive, Smith points to the bottom-line numbers to ground the conversation. Business ultimately responds to demand. Caitlin Clark drives arena attendance, shatters jersey sales records, and delivers unprecedented television viewership. Smith argues that rather than resisting this wave, players across the league stand to benefit from the rising tide she creates, including charter travel, upgraded accommodations, and expanded media rights deals. Yet, internal focus often remains fixated on competitive hierarchy rather than collective growth. The inclusion of Travis Scott and the Kelsey brothers in her promotional campaign highlights her crossover appeal. Caitlin Clark resonates with casual fans, mainstream sports audiences, and pop culture consumers alike, breaking through the traditional boundaries of women's basketball viewership. Smith noted that this broad appeal renders her market position secure. If opposing teams engage in overly aggressive tactics or non-basketball plays, pushback comes not just from core basketball fans, but from the general public. Looking back at her transition from college to the pros, the competition for her endorsement rights was intense. Major athletic brands aggressively pursued her signature, but Nike secured the long-term partnership, strategically timing her signature shoe drop for spring 2026 to build sustained anticipation following her rookie campaign. Smith highlighted that while traditional administrative channels struggled to leverage her arrival, corporate partners built a structured narrative around her rise. Furthermore, while previous signature shoe launches enjoyed solid success, production pipelines for Clark's signature debut are reportedly prepping inventory levels far exceeding standard releases. Brands are betting that her footwear will transition into lifestyle fashion, worn far beyond the court in everyday settings. As Stephen A. Smith observed, when an athlete's brand achieves everyday lifestyle status, their cultural impact becomes permanent, joining elite company in sports history. This creates an unprecedented dynamic for league executives. Management faces the complex task of maximizing her economic impact without alienating the broader locker room. Smith delivered a clear message to leadership: adapt to modern athlete empowerment or risk falling behind. He predicted that upcoming media rights negotiations will heavily reflect her individual viewership draw, noting that broadcast valuations are directly tied to her participation. Moving into next season, this power dynamic will be tested further. We are witnessing a traditional league ecosystem trying to navigate an athlete whose commercial footprint rivals the organization itself. Smith compared this phenomenon to Tiger Woods' impact on golf or Michael Jordan's early years in professional basketball, where established structures initially resist an anomaly before ultimately reshaping around it. Regarding previous on-court incidents, where officiating appeared inconsistent during highly physical matchups, Smith suggested her massive corporate backing will naturally impact how games are called. With hundreds of millions of dollars at stake across global brand partnerships, league officials cannot afford to let marquee talent face unnecessary physical risk. A tighter whistle next season could further heighten competitive tensions if rival teams feel star players are receiving protected status. The strategic inclusion of the Kelsey brothers, representing the massive cultural footprint of the NFL, further solidifies her position alongside top-tier mainstream sports figures. For business-minded analysts, expanding the sport's reach is the priority, while traditionalists worry about shifting league culture. Smith firmly aligns with expansion, emphasizing that resisting growth hinders the entire sport's progression. The simplicity and adaptability of her new interlocking logo reflect modern brand ownership. Beyond visual appeal, signature equity represents long-term financial independence. With standard royalty structures applied to projected sales volumes, her off-court earnings represent generational wealth generated annually. When Caitlin Clark steps onto the floor, she operates as the centerpiece of a major global brand, creating a unique psychological dynamic for opponents. Smith noted that competing against an athlete with unprecedented commercial backing creates intense psychological motivation, guaranteeing that future matchups will be among the most physical and fiercely contested of her career. As global campaigns launch and financial partnerships expand, Caitlin Clark's integration into mainstream entertainment and sports culture marks a permanent shift in how professional athletes build their legacies.